The night was quiet in Crestwood Hills, the kind of suburban neighborhood that looked perfectly ordinary on the surface. White picket fences, well-trimmed lawns, and a homeowners association that seemed to keep everything a little too polished. Street lights hummed with a low electric buzz, and crickets chirped in the shadows. At first glance, it was the safest place a parent could hope to raise a child. 16-year-old Ethan Miller thought so too, most of the time. That evening, he was walking home from a friend's house, just a few blocks away, earbuds in and backpack slung over his shoulder. He wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. Just a teenager heading home after a long Saturday of video games, pizza, and laughter. The night air felt crisp, and he was glad for the cool breeze brushing against his face. But as he turned onto Maple Drive, Ethan noticed something strange. Parked across the road was a black SUV, with tinted windows and bright spotlights mounted near the mirrors. It wasn't a police cruiser, at least not one he'd ever seen before. The vehicle idled with its engine purring low, and Ethan couldn't shake the prickling sensation crawling up his neck. He tried to ignore it at first. Probably just security, he thought. After all, the HOA was notorious for its strict rules and over-the-top enforcement. They fined people for leaving trash cans out too long, or having grass an inch too high. But security cars? That seemed unusual. Then the SUV's headlights flared to life, blinding him for a moment. A loudspeaker crackled. "You there? Stop walking. Identify yourself." Ethan froze. He pulled out his earbuds, heart hammering. "Ah, me?" "Yes, you," the voice barked, sharp and commanding. "Put your hands where we can see them." Confused and startled, Ethan raised his hands halfway in the air. From the SUV, two men stepped out. They wore dark uniforms with patches on the sleeves, but the logos didn't match any real police department. Instead, they read, Crestwood Hills HOA Enforcement Division. Ethan blinked in disbelief. "Wait. HOA Enforcement. What is this?" The taller of the two men, a stocky figure with a buzz cut, strode forward. His boots crunched against the pavement as he glared at Ethan. "You're loitering after hours. This is private property. You're under investigation." I live here," Ethan stammered. "My house is just down the street." The second man, slimmer but with a cold edge in his voice, circled behind him. "That's what they all say. Identification. Now." Ethan fumbled for his wallet, but the buzzcut man yanked his arm roughly. "Hands where we can see them. You think we don't know tricks? Kids like you sneak around, vandalize property, cause trouble. Not tonight." Ethan's pulse spiked. "I swear I'm not doing anything wrong. Please, just let me go home." The men ignored him. One grabbed his backpack, rifling through it like a police officer conducting a search. The other pulled out a pair of zip-tie cuffs from his belt. "You're coming with us until we verify your story," the buzzcut man growled. Ethan's stomach dropped. Fear clawed at his chest. "You can't just, you're not real cops." But his protest was met with silence as plastic restraints cinched tight around his wrists. The false badge on the man's chest gleamed under the streetlight, a manufactured authority meant to intimidate. The HOA had long been rumored to be extreme, but Ethan never imagined they would go this far. The men shoved him toward the SUV, the tinted windows hiding what was inside. Ethan's mind raced. Kidnapping. Illegal detention. He had no idea what these people were truly capable of. His mother's voice echoed in his head, telling him always to be careful, always to be alert. His mother, Rachel Miller, wasn't just any parent. She was the district attorney for the county, a woman known for her fierce pursuit of justice and her zero tolerance for corruption. But at that moment, Ethan wasn't sure anyone could help him. He felt helpless, dragged toward a vehicle by strangers masquerading as officers. As they opened the back door and shoved him inside, Ethan caught a glimpse of something taped to the dashboard, a laminated sheet labeled HOA Patrol Arrest Protocol. It looked official at first glance, but was filled with legal nonsense, phrases that sounded legitimate, but had no basis in law. It was theater, a performance meant to control and frighten. The SUV doors slammed shut, and the engine revved. Ethan sat in the back seat, hands bound, breathing hard. "This is insane," he muttered under his breath. One of the fake officers turned around, smirking. "Better get used to it, kid. Rules are rules in Crestwood Hills." But Ethan knew one thing they didn't. His mom was the one person they should never have messed with. And she was about to find out. Rachel Miller was wrapping up paperwork at the kitchen table when her phone buzzed. The lamp beside her cast a pool of warm light over stacks of case files, notes, and coffee cups, signs of another long evening in the life of a county district attorney. She rubbed her eyes, glancing at the clock. Nearly 10:30 p.m. Ethan should have been home by now. He was never careless about curfew, not with Rachel as his mom. She picked up the phone. The caller ID flashed her son's number. Relief washed through her chest, until she answered. "Ethan? Where are you?" But it wasn't Ethan's voice on the other end. It was a cold, clipped tone, the kind that made her lawyer instincts prickle. This is Crestwood Hills HOA enforcement. Your son has been detained for loitering and suspicious activity. He's being processed." Rachel froze, every nerve in her body locking tight. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" "Your son," the man repeated, "was apprehended by our patrol unit. He'll be held until we verify his identity." Rachel's grip on the phone tightened. The pulse in her temple throbbed. HOA enforcement. Detained. She knew every law enforcement agency in the county by name, badge, and jurisdiction. And whatever this wasn't one of them. She forced her voice steady, though fury laced every word. "Listen very carefully. My son is 16 years old. He lives in Crestwood Hills. He was walking home. And unless you have a lawful warrant signed by a judge, you have no authority to lay a finger on him." The man on the line chuckled, smug and dismissive. "With respect, the HOA has its own rules. Your son broke them. Until the matter is resolved, he stays with us." Rachel's chair screeched back against the tile as she stood. Her heartbeat spiked, anger surging like wildfire. "You're impersonating law enforcement. That's a felony. If my son isn't released in the next 5 minutes, I'll have actual police swarming Crestwood Hills so fast your little enforcement division won't know what hit them." The line went dead. For a second, Rachel stared at the silent phone in disbelief, then adrenaline took over. She grabbed her keys, slung her blazer over her shoulder, and strode toward the door. Every ounce of her courtroom presence, sharp, commanding, unyielding, burned beneath her skin. She wasn't just a mother right now. She was the district attorney, and someone had made the mistake of a lifetime. Meanwhile, in the SUV, Ethan sat with his wrists bound, heart racing. The two men in fake uniforms whispered back and forth, casting glances his way. He tried to keep calm, though his thoughts spun out of control. "They can't actually do this," he muttered, half to himself. "Quiet," the slimmer man snapped. "You're in custody." "Custody of what?" Ethan shot back, the DA's fire in his blood. "You're not real cops. My mom's going to destroy you." The man smirked. "Everyone says that until they learn who's really in charge around here." But outside the SUV, headlights swept across the street. A familiar car screeched to a halt behind them. Rachel Miller stepped out, her heels clicking like gunshots against the pavement, her eyes locked on the black SUV as if it were prey. She walked with the confidence of someone who had put gang leaders, fraudsters, and career criminals behind bars, and now, these imposters were in her crosshairs. The buzzcut man stepped out of the SUV, blocking her path. This is HOA business. We have the situation under control. Rachel pulled her ID wallet from her pocket, snapping it open with practiced precision. The gold seal of the district attorney's office gleamed under the streetlight. You have nothing under control, she said, her voice low and lethal. Release my son. Now. The man faltered, but tried to stand firm. We're authorized by the HOA charter. He was loitering. Rachel's laugh was sharp, humorless. The HOA charter. Do you have any idea how ridiculous that sounds in front of the chief prosecutor for this county? The slimmer man climbed out, scowling. Lady, back off. We're enforcing community safety. Rachel's gaze sliced through him. No. You're committing unlawful detention, impersonating police officers, and kidnapping a minor. Each of those charges carries serious prison time. She took a step closer, her heels striking like hammers. And guess what? I'm the one who decides how hard the hammer comes down. Inside the SUV, Ethan's chest swelled with relief. His mom wasn't just standing up for him, she was tearing these frauds to pieces, word by word. The two men exchanged uneasy glances. Their bravado flickered. Crestwood Hills HOA might have filled their heads with authority, but against Rachel Miller, their illusion crumbled. She pulled out her phone. Last chance. You release him right now, and maybe I'll consider not pressing every possible charge. Keep resisting, and this street will be lit up with sirens in 2 minutes. Buzzcut's jaw clenched. You wouldn't. Rachel's finger hovered over her phone screen. Try me. There was a long, tense silence. Finally, with a muttered curse, the slimmer man opened the SUV door and yanked Ethan out. The zip ties were cut, and Ethan stumbled into his mother's arms. Rachel steadied him, eyes never leaving the so-called officers. If you ever so much as look at my son again, you'll wish you'd never heard the word HOA. For the first time, fear flickered in their eyes. But Rachel wasn't done. Not by a long shot. This wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was about power abused, neighbors terrorized, and criminals hiding behind fake badges. And Rachel Miller was going to dismantle their operation piece by piece. The storm had only begun. The night air in Crestwood Hills hung heavy with tension. Ethan stood close to his mother, rubbing the red marks on his wrists where the zip ties had bitten into his skin. Rachel didn't flinch. Her eyes were locked on the two imposters who had dared put their hands on her child. They shifted uncomfortably under her glare. The bravado was gone. For years, they'd strutted around the neighborhood in fake uniforms, emboldened by fear and the HOA board's backing. Tonight, for the first time, someone with real power stood in their way. Rachel dialed her phone with deliberate calm. Chief Delgado. It's Miller. I have a kidnapping in progress on Maple Drive. 2 males, posing as officers. Get your units here now. The men blanched. You called the cops, the slimmer one stammered. Rachel's lips curled into the faintest of smiles. No. I called my cops. Within minutes, sirens pierced the night. Red and blue lights bathed the pristine houses, washing over manicured hedges and spotless driveways. Crestwood Hills had always prided itself on order. Now, the order was cracking wide open. 3 squad cars pulled up, doors flying open. Officers stormed out, guns drawn, voices sharp. Hands in the air. Now. The fake HOA cops froze like deer in headlights. Their authority, so fragile to begin with, evaporated under the flashing strobes of real law enforcement. Slowly, reluctantly, they raised their hands. Ethan exhaled a shaky breath, clutching his mom's arm. Rachel didn't take her eyes off the men as officers cuffed them. "Rachel," Chief Delgado said, striding over, "you weren't kidding. These clowns actually zip-tied your son." She nodded once, jaw tight. "Pulled him off the street like it was their personal police state. I want every inch of their so-called operation dismantled. Vehicles, uniforms, phony badges, all of it." Delgado let out a low whistle. "Looks like they've been running this scam a while. Community complaints, intimidation, illegal fines. I've heard whispers. Guess tonight they picked the wrong family." "They picked the wrong mom," Rachel corrected. Her voice carried not just fury but promise. The unraveling. By midnight, the quiet neighborhood was transformed into a crime scene. Officers catalogued evidence, badges made of cheap metal, binders full of fake laws, even a converted garage stuffed with surveillance equipment. Neighbors peered out from behind curtains, whispering as Rachel stood tall beneath the streetlights. Many of them had lived in silent frustration, too afraid to question the HOA's so-called patrols. Now, relief rippled through the community like fresh air. Ethan, sitting on the back of an ambulance while a paramedic checked his wrists, caught his mom's eye. "I told them you'd come. I told them they messed up." Rachel's stern expression softened. She brushed a hand through his hair. "Nobody touches my son. Not while I'm breathing." But her eyes burned with something deeper than maternal instinct. This wasn't just about Ethan. It was about the abuse of power masquerading as order. Chief Delgado approached again. "We'll book them tonight. But Rachel, I've got a feeling the HOA board's fingerprints are all over this. The patrol division didn't come out of thin air." Rachel's jaw tightened. "Then we follow the trail. I'll file for an immediate injunction. No one else in this neighborhood is going to be terrorized under the guise of rules. Not on my watch." The courtroom showdown. 2 weeks later, Crestwood County Courthouse buzzed with anticipation. The scandal had exploded beyond Crestwood Hills, drawing media crews and public outrage. The phrase "fake HOA cops" trended online for days. Inside the courtroom, Rachel stood at the prosecutor's table, her presence commanding. Across from her sat the two imposters, now stripped of their costumes, looking far smaller in plain orange jumpsuits. But more importantly, seated beside their defense attorney were 3 HOA board members, faces pale, lips pressed tight. Evidence had tied them directly to the scheme. They'd funded the fake patrol, drafted the bogus charters, and encouraged arrests to keep the neighborhood safe. Rachel's opening statement cut like a blade. "These defendants stand before you today not as protectors of community safety, but as predators. They created a shadow police force, illegal, unauthorized, and dangerous, designed to intimidate neighbors into obedience. They didn't enforce laws, they broke them. They didn't protect children, they kidnapped them. And when they laid hands on my 16-year-old son, they proved just how reckless, how corrupt, and how criminal their scheme had become." Gasps echoed through the gallery. Cameras clicked. Rachel let the silence hang, then drove the point home. "In this county, we don't tolerate vigilante justice dressed up as authority. We don't tolerate fraud dressed up as law. And we certainly don't tolerate anyone, who dares to steal the freedom of a child." Ethan sat in the front row beside relatives, chest swelling with pride. His mom wasn't just defending him, she was defending every person who'd been silenced by fear. The trial moved quickly. Witnesses testified about fines for minor infractions, about threats of detention if rules weren't followed. One neighbor recounted being stopped on his own driveway for excessive noise because he laughed too loudly during a barbecue. Piece by piece, Rachel dismantled the defense until there was nothing left but the naked truth. The HOA board had created a private police state to control their community, and it had blown up in their faces. The jury needed less than a day. Guilty, the foreman read. On all counts. The courtroom erupted. The imposters slumped in defeat. The HOA board members buried their faces in their hands. Rachel allowed herself one small smile. Justice at last. Aftermath. Crestwood Hills changed forever. The HOA dissolved within months, its reputation unsalvageable. The county sheriff's office stepped in to provide legitimate community policing, restoring trust. Ethan became something of a local symbol, the kid who stood up to fake cops. Reporters asked him for interviews, but he mostly shrugged them off. What mattered was that his neighborhood felt safe again, free of the shadows that had lingered too long. One afternoon, sitting on the porch with his mom, he asked, "Do you ever get tired of fighting everyone?" Rachel looked out across the quiet street, where children now rode bikes without fear. Tired? Sure. But stopping? Never. The law isn't just my job, Ethan. It's who I am. And sometimes, the fight comes right to your doorstep. He nodded, thoughtful. Guess they didn't realize whose doorstep they picked. Rachel laughed softly, the sound carrying a mix of relief and steel. She pulled him into a side hug. They do now. The sun dipped low, casting golden light over Crestwood Hills. For the first time in a long while, the neighborhood felt like what it was always meant to be, home. And though Rachel knew there would always be another case, another battle, she also knew this: no one would ever forget the night the fake HOA cops were brought down by a mother's fury and the weight of the law. Justice had come knocking. And it had answered loud.